Hello and a very warm welcome to all the viewers of Detox, that is Disruptive Literacy Talks. And this is Tanmay Prakash, your host of the session. Detox aims at coming together and eradicating illiteracy and numeracy, focusing upon foundational literacy and numeracy as committed under the Sustainable Development Goal 4 and in India's national education policy as well. We at Detox focus to educate and make literate all the out of the school children and the underprivileged adults. Education is a continuous and a creative process. It aims to develop the capacities latent in human nature and to coordinate their expressions for enrichment and progress of the society. And moreover, we believe in disrupting the status quo when best is not the enough. Moving on to today's session, it will be based upon foundational literacy and numeracy. And with this, I would like to introduce you with the speaker of the session, Ms. Anjali A. Nambiar, Program Director, Mantra for Change, who will be speaking upon the topic enabling the primary school education ecosystem to lead continuous and sustainable transformations. Founded in 2013, Mantra is an acronym that stands for Maverick Association for Novelty, Transformation, and Radical Augmentation. They envision a better world, one with equal opportunities for all. The key components being quality and equity in education, started by three members as a pilot project at one school in Bangalore. Today, Mantra for Change has a team size of 44 spanning across the city. Their school transformation and empowerment project STEP and Project for Active Cluster Engagement PACE work with under-resourced schools. Mantra has already partnered with 88 schools in Bangalore. Through their projects, they take a holistic approach towards improving every school. They access their impact through improved students' outcome, empowered school leadership, better teaching, learning practices, and productive community participation. Today, Ms. Anjali is with us from Mantra for Change. And Ms. Anjali is an engineer turned into a development professional who believes in power of systematic change. Working from the grassroots level, she has been able to produce contextual and empathetic solutions for all the stakeholders who are the part of the education system. She is currently working with various state governments in country to ensure the system is empowered to deliver quality education to all the children. Joined Mantra as a school transformation lead, she is currently the program lead of design and operation of school leadership development program as a part of Uttar Pradesh government's Mission Prerna program. Welcome, Ms. Anjali. Welcome to Detox.
Thank you so much, Tanmay. And thank you so much for having me as part of Detox, which is doing a fabulous job right now in terms of creating the awareness for foundational literacy and numeracy, which is very much a need of the hour. And thank you for having me share whatever little bit I know about what the work that we are doing as part of Mantra.
Basically, we are thankful to you that you accepted our invitation and you are here with us doing a session with Detox.
Sure. Thank you so much.
So, would you like to share about something about Mantra for Change and your work, what you do there?
Yes, definitely. So I think I would like to introduce myself. So I'm Anjali, and I think Tanmay has already done a great job at introducing Mantra and me. But with respect to like what Mantra does, just to give you a quick glimpse, we work on systemic education transformation, like what Tanmay mentioned, and what we are working on is to see how different stakeholders, different pieces of the system can come together to create sustainable education change. And our vision is creating an enriching learning experience for every child through whatever programs that we are running. So I would like to quickly take you through a quick presentation to see how Mantra works on the ground, and also to give a quick sense of how foundational literacy numeracy is being targeted through the program that we are doing at different levels. So to quickly take you through the challenge that we are faced by. So right now, if you see at a country level, we have 350 million children, and we have around 10 million teachers across the country. And these are certain statistics. I'm sure a lot of you would already be aware. People who are working in the education space, in the FLN space, would be aware of a lot of these numbers. But just to quickly bring back, why this challenge, why working on education is so important. Um, I would just like to draw your attention towards the challenge that we're faced by. Um, Looking at this whole education challenge and focusing on the FLN part of it, um, this is how it looks like. So if you look at FLN in focus, what we see is just the tip of the iceberg. So you can see that with respect to literacy, with respect to reading skills, India's performance is pretty, it's something that can definitely be improved. And similarly for the numeracy aspect as well, it's something that can definitely be improved. And it is a pretty dismal situation right now. And all of this is from the ASER surveys and the different reports that ASER has been creating across the years now. But when we go deeper into it, what is surfaced as an FLN issue is not only the fact that students are not able to read, not able to, perform mathematical operations, basic mathematical operations, but it's a whole systemic challenge. So as you can see, there are different issues that are kind of working towards this, what is kind of, showing up in the classrooms or in the students' way of learning. So there is a very, very important piece of the system that needs to be kind of developed. Their capacity needs to be developed. Leadership in the school is something that, in the time that Mantra has been working in the schools, we have seen that the leadership in the school, be the HM or different, even different cadres within the system, like say you have the block education officers, you have different levels of leadership in the system. There is a lot of capacity that can be built in the leadership of the education system to be able to take the process forward with respect to delivering quality education. We also see that there is a lack of framework for improvement, to say that what does improvement look like for us or look like for this department. There is a lack of clarity with respect to having a very clear goal. Um, and we also see that there are a lot of practices, a lot of processes that are very redundant. There are a lot of attendance mechanisms, a lot of different, reports that people have to collect, or a lot of surveys that people have to do in the department, which is pretty redundant and can be replaced by much more efficient systems, which could in fact trickle down to better performance in the classroom. So this is just to kind of unpack what is lying underneath the FLN problem that we see on the surface. Moving forward, what Mantra attempts to do is work with the system to say that, the education system needs a little bit of help, needs some support from our side to say, build their capacity, develop better tools for them to, make their processes a lot more smoother, help them with a framework that is aligned towards FLN goals, and, aligning everybody in the system towards that. So that is something that Mantra works with on different levels. So, like Tanmay mentioned, we have different programs at different levels. So we have a school transformation and empowerment program, which works on single schools. There is a cluster program that Mantra works on, which works at a cluster level, which is around 20 to 30 schools, which form a cluster, which is the PACE program. And we also have a district program, and we have a state transformation program. So for the purpose of this session, I would talk about the state transformation program, which is called STRIDE, and talk a little bit about how the ecosystem can be improved in a way to support FLN goals. So if you look at this image, this is pretty much how we try to work with the system, where there is a state leadership, there's district leadership, and there's different block leaderships, and how that then translates into schools and the environment that the students live in, and how that ultimately translates into better student learning outcomes. So moving forward, through our journey in Mantra, we've tried to kind of see what are those ingredients that build towards the ecosystem helping FLN development. So these are some things that kind of have been distilled out. So if you can see, the first one is with respect to having a common FLN goal across the state, which is very explicit. So if at the beginning of the process of conducting an FLN drive, or having the state look at FLN as a very important piece of what the department is aiming to do, having that goal very specific and very explicit is something that we have seen helps. The second part is with respect to being on a mission mode, where it's not just one part of the department that's working towards this, but everybody in the department, each and every cadre, is working towards this ultimate goal of achieving FLN outcomes, and with a specific timeline. So this is also something that we've seen is helping towards aligning of the entire department towards building better FLN goals. The third one is with respect to bringing a collective of partners. So I think one of the things that we've seen, even different departments, even different state departments are doing currently, is acknowledging the fact that they need expertise of people who worked in the education system for a long time. They have an understanding of how FLN works, how teachers learn better, how teachers can teach better, what are those strategies that people can use to deliver better education in the classroom. So that acknowledgement and that bringing together of various partners is something that we have seen really helps to drive the FLN goals. The fourth one is with respect to, after this mission mode, or after having said gotten the entire system towards an aligned mission working towards FLN, how do we make sure that this is a systemic change and not just a piecemeal approach where we got it right for this time, but then going forward again there's a possibility of collapse. So how do we make it sustainable by saying, do we have systemic changes that make these interventions something that will stay, that's here to stay, and not something that would break down. The fifth one is with respect to a culture shift to say that, yes, this is a mission that we achieved, but even going forward, we will have a lot more things to achieve. We would have a lot more improvements to make. And what is that forward looking culture that we can build within the system to say that this is not it, but then we can go ahead and encourage better practices, better improvement methods in the system. So this is something that we've seen helps kind of bring together an FLN focused mission where the intervention is moving towards success. And this is also something which is in line with NEP, where NEP does talk about a mission approach towards meeting our FLN goals, the very, very basic FLN goals. So just for this session, I would be taking the example of UP. So UP is the state where we are currently working. Mantra is currently working there across all the government schools. So we are working across 1.35 lakh government schools in the state, and we have same amount of school leaders that we work with, and we have around 900 block education officers that we work with, and we are focusing on the school leadership development aspect. So I would like to take you through each of these 5 aspects that I spoke about earlier as to how through this program in UP, which is called the Mission Prerna program, how is all of this kind of coming alive? So moving forward, the first point about a common FLN goal across the state, which is made very explicit. So this is something that has happened across the state, where there is a mission, which is Mission Prerna, and there are goals that have been set out for grade 1 to grade 5 across literacy and numeracy. And this is very explicit. Every cadre in the department is aware of this. And right now, at least in the first year, that was the idea, that we make this extremely explicit and everybody knows about what the goal is. Now, once this goal is very explicit, every teacher, every HM, every block education officer, everybody knows what our lakshya is. Now, once that is done, we looked at how the entire system can come together to work towards this prerna lakshya. And again, just to give you a sense of how complex this problem is and how complex this whole the department is. It's not just one stakeholder that we're working with or one process that we're working with. This is how the entire system, this is just a representation. There are a lot more different pieces here, there are a lot more different actors here, but just to give you a sense of how the whole entire department looks like, there are certain people who are working at a state level. Right now here there are state resource groups in UP. Different states have different people, different cadre names for this particular state level official. They have certain activities that fall under their KPIs or fall under a set of things that they are supposed to be accountable for. Now, after that, there is a block level cadre that is there, and a lot of uh, things that they are accountable for. And then there are HMs, and then there are teachers. So any change that needs to happen at a teacher level needs to in turn happen at a HM level, at a block level, and at a state level. So this is the complexity that we are dealing with, and that's kind of what we're looking at, that the entire cadre system works towards this particular mission. uh, Moving forward, looking at the different partners that are coming together. So right now, Mission Prerna is a program where different partners are on board. So we do have the government, which the Department of School Education is already somebody who's owning this whole process. Along with them, with respect to say administrative initiatives, we have Samagra Governance, which is another organization that's working across that. Academic initiatives, there are different organizations. There's Language Learning Foundation, there's Pratham, there's different organizations that's coming together there. And with respect to the systemic transformation or the system leadership development, that's where Mantra fits in. So as you can see, there are multiple organizations, multiple partners that are coming together with this common focus. And this collective is what is helping drive this change. So this is another important piece in driving the FLN goals. Again, FLN is your goal, but then for that to happen, there are many other things that need to be set in place so that it's almost like a whole machinery working, where each small little change kind of has an impact on the student learning outcomes. And moving forward, with respect to how do you make these changes sustainable, there are certain practices that we are starting to have where we are building spaces where BOs can come together and brainstorm about certain ideas. As you can see, there are certain e-Pathshala components that are happening at the state level where BOs brainstorm about how can we get more participation in these spaces, how can we increase the number of parents who come as part of a virtual PTM. So all these brainstorming spaces which can continue even after the mission has been completed is something that we're trying to set in place. Certain workshops to build their capacity and also motivate the different cadres is something that we are doing. The other important aspect is also to see how, because it is at scale, it's 1.35 lakh schools that we're talking about. Technology is something that needs to be looked at, and we look at how technology can help schools understand where they are and make those changes on their own. So it becomes like a self-healing system which can continuously keep making those changes. So this is just a quick overview of that. And last but definitely not the least is how are we looking at this culture shift to say that yes, we will work towards this mission right now, but even after this, how do we continue this process? So something that we're trying to do is create a mission and a vision statement with the stakeholders from UP department. And this is just an exercise that we were doing where some state resource group people had given us certain ideas and we put down certain mission statements. That's one part of that, to say that can we build that culture in the entire system, to say we won't stop here, but we're looking at creating a much more impactful education for our students. The other part is also to say, how do we continuously innovate and how do we encourage these innovations? So the image on the right is about how HMs in the department who are doing really extremely amazing work are being acknowledged and rewarded by the department. So that is the DGSE there in the picture, who's announced this award for the best innovation at a school level. And this is something that again we are working on to see how can we, kind of put the spotlight on people who are really innovating and also continue that process of encouraging them. So this is just in a nutshell to say, yes, we need to work towards FLN, but then it's very important to create that ecosystem, to create those systemic changes to help move towards those FLN goals. So yeah, that's all from my side with respect to what we're doing with respect to UP and how UP's FLN, looking at UP's students and looking at FLN as part of UP. How is that? Yes, how is that looking like? So yes, I think I hope I didn't talk a lot of jargon. I hope this is helpful to just yes.
Yeah, it was a very great presentation, and the thing which I liked, that you said that FLN is an final outcome, but to reach there we need to set certain goals out. So yes, you are doing, Mantra for Change is doing a great job. And moving further with, I have several questions in my mind which I would like to ask you, and starting with that, what are the uh, perspective of Mantra for Change on the learning crisis issues in the foundational literacy and numeracy post COVID?
Sure. So I think with respect to how currently the system is looking at, we see that it's almost 9% to 10% of a child's life that they spend in school. So this is something that I read very recently. So if you see, the rest of the part of the child's life is in the house, right? So we need to look at ways in which, even if the child doesn't go to a school per se, they should be able to think through, how am I learning, or how is the child continuing learning even outside a school space. So that is something that education should be able to provide. I know it is a very idealistic goal, but then the pandemic has really helped us think about this, to say that yes, even outside of school learning can happen, and how do we continue this process of learning. So some things that we have tried doing is, we've tried to bring a blended learning approach during the pandemic itself, where students were introduced to certain project learning approaches, where we had certain videos that were sent to students, where it had components of different aspects of subjects. So just to give you an example, we had a project about creating a pop-up restaurant. So they would have to create a restaurant in their houses, and it would be a week-long project. Now, in this project, they would have to make a menu. They would have to think about what kind of uh, you know uh, dishes should they be serving, what kind of people should they be inviting, how do they invite people, how to create those invites. Now this has various learning outcomes being achieved, right? So they have to think about, if they have to buy 5 carrots, how much does that cost? So they will ask their parents, okay, what is the price of one carrot, and they would do those small applications of mathematics. They would have to create the invite, so to write down the invite, and they would share it with their teachers. So to write down the invite, they will have to find out what all goes into that. How do I say this in English? So they would reach out to parents saying that, or they would reach out to teachers saying, okay, how do I say I want you to come at this time in English? And they would write that down and send pictures. And there are a lot of examples like this. And again, we did this in collaboration with another organization called Education Above All. But we saw brilliant results. We saw that even outside of school, students were able to pick up these learning outcomes through a very very fun-filled manner, a manner which is a continuous process. It's not a one-time classroom approach, but a continuous process, which is very helpful to also bring parents together in this process, right? So that's something that I would see continue even after the pandemic, and I would hope to continue even after the pandemic.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I would like to take a question from the chat. Milita has to ask that what are your plans to tackle the problems of the dropout from school?
Yes, I think that's a very important question and very difficult question as well. So definitely, I think this has been a time where a lot of people are dropping out from schools, and bringing them back to school will definitely be a challenge. Uh, like I said, we need to be doing this in a mission mode. We need to be doing this where everybody is involved, not just teachers, not just students. We need the parents, we need the community, we need everybody to be part of this process, to bring them back to schools, and to make sure that education is like the primary agenda after the pandemic. And we also need to look at a very very quick a bridge course kind of a model, where when students are back, to kind of bridge that gap between that whole learning loss that has happened. Definitely, I think we will need some time to catch up. um, but again, I mean, not stressing on the point that they need to be in the classroom or they need to start learning without you know being in the classroom also needs to be looked at, and that's something that I think we need to look at as uh, a balanced approach going forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as you said that you are now partnering with the schools in Uttar Pradesh. So what were the major roadblocks when you started partnering with the schools in Uttar Pradesh?
Sure. Um, so I think when we started almost 6 months back. So when we started with the whole process, I think for us to identify, some of those the links between certain cadres was something that we had to learn a lot from the ground. We had to do a lot of field visits to understand what is already happening, for us to build on that, because we wouldn't want to create a parallel system. So anything that we're creating should be to enable the systems that are already in place, to say that, all right, if this is already happening, how can we strengthen it, or how can we make it a little more effective in order to deliver the best learning outcomes. So that was a challenge for us, to understand the field, to understand what are the dynamics, how do we take this approach, because every state is not the same, every department is not the same. And acknowledging that, to understand the landscape, to understand the needs of the schools and of that department, that was a challenge in the beginning. um, I think there's also a change with respect to how this whole mission is being looked at. So we also started with certain learning modules for certain school leaders. So to have them, go through those learning modules to see how that can be implemented. That took some time, because it was a very new process for school leaders to have the continuous learning model, where they would have a lot of modules to go through to learn about instructional leadership. How do you bring community on board? So that initial the change, the fear of a change is something that we kind of experience. But yes, beyond, like, after some time, I think that was much smoother. Yeah, so I think that's those are the two things I would want to talk about.
And as you stated that you started 6 months earlier this project in Uttar Pradesh, and so
Yes.
what were the challenges? Like, it was post COVID, and in between the second wave of COVID also intervened. So
Yeah.
how did you manage to dodge those challenges and implement your project in Uttar Pradesh?
Sure, sure. So I think there are two things. One is, even before, like even when we started with the processes, a lot of the processes were already designed keeping the scale in mind, because it's a huge, it's almost as big as a country outside. So if you can actually compare it to a country.
Right.
Keeping that scale in mind, we'd already envisioned the program on a lot of technological platforms. So a lot of things that were happening were already happening on a technological platform. So say things like learning courses that were being sent out, or certain projects that we wanted the school leaders to take up. We were already imagining it in a way which could be sent to the school leaders, or the school leaders could pick it up and contextualize it in their own schools. So it was already imagined on a tech platform. That's the first thing. So pivoting was easy because it was already on a platform, and that's how the trajectory was. The second one is that we did have to pivot certain things, like say the workshops that were envisioned where it was supposed to happen in person. We are looking at how we can do it in an online mode, but keeping the essence the same. Not compromising on how motivating it can be, what kind of spaces that we are creating. What do we want to leave the BOs with, or the different cadres with? We wouldn't want to compromise on that, but thinking of how do we go online with certain in-person practices. That's something that kind of was a roadblock, was something that we needed to really think about. Um, and we're getting there. We're still kind of thinking that through and trying to shift our focus and way of working accordingly. Yeah.
And what were the strategies for enabling these support through capacity building of teachers, goals, setting up goals, timeline, assessment, and the SMCs and the parent support? What were the strategies behind that? Because I think parent support is one thing which is needed to for ensuring the education.
Definitely. And I think this was a very important piece for us as well. Like from the beginning, um, we are looking at different. Uh, the whole approach is broken down into various phases. So we are looking at how initially there can be a knowledge piece that goes across all the cadres. Once the knowledge piece is in place, we would want a focus to be there to say that, okay, for this particular month, we will focus on, say, community development, or we will focus on teacher motivation. So that was the second piece. The third piece was putting this into action. So how do we put, say, the knowledge and the focus piece into action? So if it was community development, in the action piece, we would have the school leaders conducting a virtual PTM, or we would have the school leaders doing something to encourage the teachers in their school. And that would be something that's happening across the state. So that piece, that focus, after the knowledge and the focus piece have been identified, would be something that's happening across the state. And after the focus piece, we had the motivating piece to say that, yes, people are doing this. There are a lot of schools who are doing, say, the virtual PTMs or conducting activities to motivate teachers. How are we motivating them? How are we keeping them encouraged? And how are we, having people be appreciated for what they're doing? So these are different pieces that we would do, which would be applied for all the different areas. So we would have community, we would have teacher motivation, everything go through the cycle of knowledge, focus, action, and motivation. So that's something that we're following for all the different practices that we are looking to change in the department.
Yes. And like how NGO is supporting government in a parallel manner to achieve the national education policy's goals by the year 2025?
Sure. Yeah. So whatever we're doing right now, this whole mission prerna process is uh, is something that we are working completely in tandem with the government, with the department, right? So now, like I said, there's a lot of acknowledgement by the different state departments to say that this is not something we can do completely alone, and we need NGO partners. We need a lot of CSOs to come together, come on board, and help us out with this whole process. So there is a lot of buy-in from state departments to say, please do come and help us out. Along with that, we also do a lot of co-creation. So any program that we put out in the process is not something that we do as like a standard. This is what any state can do. Versus we co-create the process with the department. So there is a lot of time that is spent to interview a lot of stakeholders to understand, what are those pain points from their side. And it's not just something that we are prescribing, versus it's something that we are co-creating with the department. So that has been a very important piece in working with the government, because they have been there for a long time. They know the context a lot more better. So how do we acknowledge that? How do we make sure that the learnings that they have are incorporated into this intervention? And then kind of, along with how we can also add value, we create that entire intervention. So yes, these are the two pieces which I think are helping us work with the department, with the government stakeholders a lot more effectively. Yes.
Yes. And with this, I would like to also invite Dr. Sunita Gandhi, who is the lead worker at Global Dream Foundational Literacy and Numeracy Project, and also a former economist at World Bank. Welcome, Dr. Gandhi. Welcome to Detox as a discussant of the panel.
Hello,
Ma'am,
Sunita
you are
ji.
on mute.
Yeah, I think you're on mute. Yes.
I'm absolutely delighted to be here on the same panel as Anjali ji, Anjali Nambiar. And Anjali, you've been doing tremendous work, and at
Thank you so much.
yeah, I mean at a high level. And I don't know. I mean, could not hear most of your presentation. Unfortunately, there was another panel meeting, but I would like to know a lot more, and in particular, how you've been able to create evidence of your work, like it's working well, and how do you measure the evidence? Maybe in the context of the different projects you do, how
Sure.
do you measure the impact?
Sure, sure. So there are different projects that we are doing as part of Mantra, which is at different levels. So we do have a school transformation program and the cluster and the state level programs. So with respect to school, we do have the program is designed in such a way that there is a person from Mantra who visits the school and understands how the school is progressing. Even with the cluster, more or less, we are able to go to the cluster and observe that. When it comes to state, that becomes very difficult because it's a huge expanse. So for that, there are a lot of tools that we are trying to use where we get data or we get information from the ground, which is emitted by the stakeholders. So we try not to be, we don't want them to kind of report what they're doing, versus through their actions itself, we're trying to see how certain M&E indicators can be assessed. So, say if there is PTM that's being done by the school leaders, we do have certain platform technology tools that we use where school leaders upload a picture from, say, the PTM that they've conducted. Or if they visited a school, we see that the school visit gets registered on the platform already. So it's not something that we have to ask them to report, versus it's an emittance model, if you know. So it's something that we already get information as the program is progressing. So even say with respect to courses that the school leaders are completing, or courses that they're implementing on the ground, we do get a sense of how many courses have been completed, how are they doing with respect to um, the course in the beginning, how is the initial baseline and end line of that process itself. And even with respect to a school itself, we're trying to see if we can have a school assessment in place where the stakeholders can kind of look at what level the schools are at for themselves, and also see how the school is progressing on different parameters. So this is also something that we're looking at introducing, but mainly, like the idea is to say that as the program progresses, can we get data from the ground which is being emitted by the stakeholders and not something that people need to go and verify. So yes, these are certain ways in which we are trying to look at monitoring and evaluation.
Right. So one is obviously knowing that the program is going well, which is absolutely wonderful. What you're saying, that it doesn't have to be so much heavy on monitoring, that you get a lot of information from the base up. The other thought was that, okay, you also want to perhaps be able to prove to the world that your program is working better than somebody else's for a minute. Like if we look at FLN goals, and these are for grades 3, 4, and 5 most of the time. How do you know that your program is having more traction, more effectiveness than, say, a program by another agency that is doing the same thing or aiming for the same?
Sure, sure. So I think, at least with respect to this program, we are looking at how we can have a third-party assessment on the ground going forward. It's too early for us. I mean, we have not really gone ahead and done the process. But that is something that we are looking at to do, where a third party could come and look at how FLN goals are being met from the baseline to the end line. And there are certain practices where um, even different partners are kind of coming together to say how do we assess the students better, to see how the baseline and end line shift is happening. Um, with respect to the program itself, like Prerna, the mission Prerna process itself, there is an important piece which is called the Prerna Ghoshna process, where the block, every block can kind of declare themselves as a Prerak Pradesh, a Prerak block. And what happens is, as and when the Ghoshna happens, there will be third party assessment that happens in that particular block. So it's also to empower the block representatives to say that, yes, I know what my FLN goals are, and I have already done an assessment with my students in the different schools, and now I'm ready to say that yes, anybody can come and see whether we've actually met that or not. So that is the kind of mode in which we are operating right now. Again, I mean, this is how it's being put down, and we are looking at third party assessments as well to kind of give us credible information about this. But yes, that's how the imagination is right now.
So are you working with the districts, with the government, or you are the government?
We're working with the government. So we are the CSOs. Yes, we are definitely the CSOs, and we're working with the government. And yes, I mean, ultimately, it is something that we would want the government to continue doing. So yes, that's
It's
how
a
the
three-year program, 5-year program, I suppose,
yes.
yeah?
Yes. Right now, it's being looked at until 2022, end of 2022. But yes, I mean, it could be extendable. This particular program is being looked at for this particular period right now. Different programs have different lengths, different timelines associated with it, depending on the scale of the program, the scope of the different interventions, and that's how we're looking at the different programs that we're working on.
Great. I think this is something that a lot of people can learn from. It sounds absolutely tremendous what you're doing and how you're making a difference on the ground. And every bit we do is meaningful. Every bit, of course, that you're doing is creating value added for everybody else, and of course the children. So I presume you're working from grades 1 through 5 or 1 through 8, or is it the
1 through
pre-primary?
5. Yes, 1 through 5 is what we're working in the UP program.
Okay.
Yes. In our
Okay.
Bangalore programs, we work until 1 to 8.
Okay, great. So you can also share across different cities how it's going, or different regions how it's going for you. I'm a data person, so I keep pushing for data. So that's okay.
Definitely. Definitely. I mean, that's absolutely wonderful. And I think we are also striving to become, somebody who has those data analytic sense whenever we're doing any project.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's
No, it's
something that
wonderful.
we're trying to enable. Yes.
You did say no baseline to end line, and so all these things are the right buzzwords and right things to be doing. I also was just hoping that we'll get a lot more like research based projects done. So with your project sounds so beautiful that at some point when you do get to a third party evaluation, or if you yourself do like a control group and a treatment group, so you look at other schools and your schools, how they've come up.
Yes.
That would be really, really remarkable, because people are making interesting claims, and they probably have achieved all those, but they should be open to skepticism and
Definitely.
to anyone's purview, and so
Yes.
forth. So it's wonderful. Now, what are the sectors in which you're working besides literacy and numeracy for little ones, um, for one
Yes.
through 5? Are you working on other development project programs?
Yes, as in towards this, we work on school leadership development as a focus. So, school leadership development, we work with different system leaders as well. So, like I mentioned, different cadres of system leaders is what we work with. So, there are HMs that we work with. We work with the block education officers. We work with state resource groups. So at different system leadership levels, we work with those system leaders. We also work on teacher training elements with the diet in some of our programs. Not in UP per se, but then that's in the pipeline. But in Bihar, we are working very much in tandem with the diet principles, and how looking at teacher training as an important aspect. So these are two things that we are currently looking at, which is driving the FLN goals. So keeping the FLN goals in mind, that's how all of our processes are being designed.
So you obviously, in order to implement FLN, you'll have to work through the teachers, through the various levels of training
Yeah.
that you're providing.
Yes.
So training is probably germane, important part of the whole thing.
Definitely.
When you say that, training at different levels, where do you think the training has the most impact, and to what extent training is the biggest thing, or is it somewhat the same as, say, implementation on the ground? How do you evaluate between training to different various stakeholder groups and training as a concept in FLN? How much impact does that have?
Sure. So we do look at a model where we can have certain instructional leaders that are built in the system, where there can be a cadre, or there can be a set of people who become like the master trainers, or the people who are taking this whole intervention forward. And that is where we're looking at the block education officers in UP currently, to say that if they are motivated, if they have that ownership of this whole mission, they can be the ones who are taking forward this mission and the vision of this whole program forward with the different HMs, the different teachers in their blocks. So right now we have identified it as the block education officers in this whole the different layers of what we're working in. So that's something that we see as a pivotal role that the BO is playing, where they can then become the instructional leaders for the rest of the system. And they are looking at the academics already, but how can we support them to say, what are those practices that you need to look for in a classroom to ensure whether teaching practices are working according to the outcomes that you're looking for, the student learning outcomes that you're looking for. Are there teaching practices working according to that? Are there strategies being implemented by the teacher according to that? So that is the piece that we're looking at. Definitely working directly with the teachers would be, very easy, or it would be the quickest way to make the, classroom practices better. But then when you look at a systemic view, or when you look at, how can you make things sustainable, I think I would say it's important to see which is that one stakeholder piece which can continue this process, which can take forward this improvement process and build that motivation, build that enthusiasm throughout the system. So there, maybe the BEO, training different cadres would be helpful to take the process forward.
That sounds just awesome. I don't want to necessarily always keep questioning you because you have so much to share. And we will hopefully meet after the live session for a few minutes. But I'd like to say that that this has been, illuminating talking to you. Engaging with a government has its blessings and maybe a few challenges. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I'm sure. Yes, I'm sure you know best about it. Definitely. I mean, there are both things to it. But it's something that we also, see the most impact working with as well. But definitely, yes, definitely there are challenges as well. Yes.
Yes. So it is obviously where the rubber hits the road, where action takes place, and now we have a lot of progressive leadership here in Uttar Pradesh, which is very, very exciting. And they're working to the goals with other partners like yourselves, like others. And I think that this is really, driven by a desire to make a difference on the ground for the child, for the individual child, driven also by the NEP And
Yes.
one more factor which I feel has really helped is making literacy number one priority
Yes.
in the whole education landscape. So in the past, we used to deny literacy in the sense that, okay, Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan means Shiksha. We have given up on literacy. We want to work on Shiksha. But,
Mhm.
forgetting the fact that Shiksha is founded upon literacy. So
That's right.
regardless of whether you call it Shiksha or literacy, the literacy is number one issue. And I think that acknowledgement in of itself within the NEP and giving that Prathmikta the most importance in the NEP and the new education policy has really added volumes to the effort. And
Yes.
then everyone has been directed to that goal. And so, therefore, we're going to see a huge sea change. And I'm praying and hoping for India's
Definitely.
education. So, what are your
Yes.
thoughts on that?
Yes, yes, no, definitely. I think there's this statement by I think Pratham, where which talks about, initially a child needs to learn to read, and then the child will be able to read to learn, right? And that's the piece that we're trying to fix, to say how do we have everybody learn to read, and then from there it's about the child taking it forward. And I think that's the piece that, if it's fixed, I mean, the kind of processes after that is something we don't have to think about a lot. Definitely, we need to work on it, but a huge portion of our work is something that will be solved by having students learn to read, and then the reading to learn process can kind of take off.
So beautifully put. Absolutely. So right. Such a lovely statement by Pratham, and you're reminding us of that. Totally right. Good. So I think I'd like to hand over to our wonderful host, Tanmay. Tanmayji, you may take over from henceforth because I just realized the time is also getting on, and share your thoughts next, or you want to guide us how we move next.
So basically, I wanted to introduce what we at Detox with our Global Dream Vision do. So we are at Global Dream and Detox have a vision of a world in which every person is empowered with the skill of foundational literacy and numeracy. Our mission is to mobilize a movement for literacy for all, and we provide education to out of the school children as well as the underprivileged adults. We have a literacy material known as toolkits, which is replicated into 13 different Indian languages such as English, Hindi, Bihari, Punjabi, Kannada, and etc. And now two more new languages have been added to foreign languages, which is Swahili and Spanish. So I would like to take you to a quick tour to the toolkit. So this is the toolkit where you can see a few pictorial representations are given. And as you can see, we basically believe in educating a child or educating an adult with their existing knowledge. So as you can see, two pictures has been displayed in the book in the introduction page. That is, one is clock and other one is rope. So we ask the child that what you see in this photo. So he says ghadi, and we say okay, and what is the first sound of ghadi? So we try to make them understand the words through their first sounds. So we ask them that what is the first sound of ghadi? So they say gha. And then we ask that what is made on the other side? He says rassi. So we ask him that what is the first sound of rassi? So he says ra. So when we ask him to collaborate these two words and these two letters, so he brings out a word called ghar, ghar, ghar. So this will eventually help in confidence building of the child. And moreover, I would also like Dr. Sunita Gandhi to add some comments into it.
Okay. Well, yes, of course. I mean, this is a reverse methodology. We don't put say in the middle. So, ghadi say gha, we don't do that, or battak say ba. Because when you put say, it becomes rote. And if you do the other way around, ba say battak, that's purely rote. So, here what's happening is there's a lot of mind connections that are going on. So, the sound naturally drops from the word like battak ba, sapera sa, ba sa, bus. And if they can understand that very first lesson, this is the very first lesson, if they can understand that, they can decode the rest of the book on their own. And that is really, really powerful, because if a learner can learn by self, they don't need an adult. That's really the best. We're now not referring to the teachers as instructors, but teachers or volunteers as mentors. So their job is to motivate and to mentor people of any age to learn by themselves and show them the way, but not interfere in their learning. So don't ever tell them what it is, because except when the picture is not clear. If the picture is not clear, we need to tell them what the picture is. But other than that, we don't need to tell them anything, and they can derive the rest of the learning on their own. So our mantra is ask, wait, don't tell. So, and they'll figure it out on their own. And that's the beauty of it. It builds so much, we see so much confidence arise out of this process. And once they've done the reading with the pictures, they get the sense, oh, I can read. That same day they want to go and teach their husband or wife. And the children want to teach each other, because now they figured out something. They feel they can go teach their parents. So though it is just picture reading, actually they get the belief that they're reading real words. And actually what's happening also is a process of abstraction in the mind. So those pictures and the symbols for the pictures, the letters we call, will actually start to gel in the mind at night and next day. And when they come to class the next day, they're able to read what is called part 2 here, which has a whole bunch of, I think, 36 other words. Or so many, 27 new words or more, I think, here. And then they can read without the pictures. And once they've read without the pictures, then within 2 sittings of 15 minutes each, which is the beauty of it, that the first sitting is 15 minutes, the second sitting is also 15 minutes a day later. And within those 30 minutes, they have learned 10 unique letters, how to read those 10 unique letters. Then they start seeing them everywhere. And those letters they start to figure out, oh, I see a ma here, I see pa here, I see ra here. Even in a newspaper, they'll look for those letters. And then the next lesson, just 5 lessons. That means 10 days, over which, with 15-minute lessons, they're able to understand the entire Swar and Vyanjan, the whole Hindi alphabet. And then there is a lot of practice of those bina matra wale shabd, without matra words. And then book 2 begins, which is the matra book. And again, in book 2, there's a particular formula. And once they understand the formula, how to decode, they can actually run book 2 also on their own, which is all matra wale shabd. And by the end of it, they're reading a newspaper. And the whole process takes about 15 hours to reading only, just to understand reading. We say don't mix reading and writing. Writing can come later. So then we take up writing. Now the letters already in their head, it's much easier to repeat that picture in their mind with a certain order in mind that we share with them. And then we teach them, I guess the goals of, they can fill a form, they can do all these things, write a letter, write their address, and then we teach them how to do numeracy at a certain level. So it goes in sequence, but it can also go in parallel. Numeracy can be taught pretty much in parallel with the language, in school especially, because in school the children are there for certain amount of time.
Yes.
But when we are teaching them to adults, we say wait on the numeracy, just do literacy first. It's already a lot of burden on their mind. Even though the methodology is very simple, they have to do a lot of mind connection. They get pasina aata, they get really like, phew, I just thought through this, because we're not telling them anything. And so this is, the beauty of it in a way. It creates intrinsic motivation. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
And moving on, as I was reading about Mantra for Change, your organization mentioned that since the beginning of your journey, you believe that systematic transformation in the field of education is only possible, is I think impossible without collaboration at every level. So how in future we at Detox with our Global Dream Foundational Literacy and Numeracy approach can collaborate with Mantra for Change? I would like to have a comment from Anjali ji, you, and Dr. Gandhi, you as well.
Sure. Yeah, I think I can maybe start. Definitely. I mean, I think that's been our mantra from the beginning, where, we try and collaborate as much as possible. And the whole idea of, not reinventing the wheel is something that we really hold close to our hearts. So definitely, like whatever you just shared, and whatever other literature is available as part of Detox or as part of Global Dream, and from various speakers also that you're putting together, I think definitely something that we would definitely want to learn from, and I'm sure even implementing these practices in the schools, in the work that we do, I am sure will yield a lot better results in the kind of work that we are doing. So definitely would like to maybe explore this collaboration a little bit more, and see how we can kind of join forces to uh, reach this FLN goal that we have. Yes.
Let's do that. Amen. I have nothing else to say. Wonderful. Just to say, let's collaborate, all of us, everywhere, and learn from each other. I just want to second what Anjali ji has said, and not reinvent the wheel when we don't need to. uh, why not bring out our strengths? And there's such a huge amount of work that needs to be done. I mean, if you look at the crises of literacy and numeracy in our country and beyond the world over, uh, there's a lot of work for everyone. So we should collaborate. Definitely.
Definitely.
Thank you.
So with this, we move to the end of the session, which was really very insightful and an informative session. And to know more about Global Dream Foundational Literacy and Numeracy approach, log into www.globaldream.guru, or you can also WhatsApp us on 740-840-6000. I would also like to thank Miss Anjali for coming on to this session and sharing us such wonderful thoughts and such wonderful things. With this, I would also like to thank Dr. Sunita Gandhi to be the part of the panel as the discussant. Thank you so much and have a nice day.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.